Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining in. Respecting everyone's times, I think we should start. So I'll be your host today for today's webinar. My name is Rashdeep. I'm the co-founder and CEO at ReWiser. For today's webinar, the format is very simple. For the first roughly about 35-40 minutes, I'm going to walk you through the entire presentation, where I'll be talking about the SATs, the ACTs, the AP exam, and how in general the admission process in study abroad kind of happens. If in case you guys have any question, please feel free to put it up in the chat section. And towards the end, we will open the forum for Q&A. Since we have less participants right now here, I think we'll be able to take up questions from each and every one of you, right? With that, let me quickly start and jump onto this entire thing. As I said, these are the topics that we are going to cover in today's webinar. Before I get into the webinar topic, let me just give a quick brief about ReWiser. So we are a high school support company which assists students worldwide achieve their high school academic goals. We largely help students from grade 9 to grade 12. We have two major verticals. The first one is test prep, where we do SATs, ACTs, and AP exam prep and PSAT exam prep. And then we also have another vertical, which is in the academic tutoring domain, where we do IGCSE, IB, and A-level subject tutoring, right? So these are the two major verticals that we cater to. We've helped about 4,000 odd students over the last 7 years across 8 countries, 20 plus cities within India. That's what we have done. And today, we're proud that most of our students, we have students in almost all the countries, in all the major colleges, they've already been placed. With that, let me quickly jump onto the webinar topic today. So I think let's try and understand how our study abroad and study in India are different from each other, right? And then I will try and deep dive into the specific thing which we really want to talk about, which is the SATs, ACTs, and AP exams, right? Now, if you really look at the difference, when you're studying in India, you're largely either writing, let's say, JEE exam for engineering, you're writing NEET exam for medicine, and so on and so forth, right? Unlike in India, in US, you are predominantly writing a specific exam, a standard exam for anything and everything that you want to do, right? So that is one major difference. Second, largely in India, they're looking at your percentage that you get in grade 12. However, in US or any other geography outside of India, they're largely looking at your academics from the last 4 years, right? So it becomes a lot more continuum process as opposed to just 1 year basis, right? So these are the major difference between the study in India versus study in abroad in terms of admission process. Now, with that, let's try and understand how does the study abroad process kind of define into, right? So there are largely 4 major pillars that you can really think about. One of them is academics. So you have to make sure that your school academics is top notch. Try your level best, right? Whatever best you can get. And when I talk about academics, they will be based from grade 9, grade 10, grade 11, and your grade 12 predicted. So unlike in India, as I said, they don't just look at your 12th grade percentage, they look at your last 4 years, which is 9, 10th, 11th, and 12th. And hence, irrespective of whichever grade you are in today, I think it's super important for you to focus on your academics. That's one. Second is standardized test scores. In terms of standardized test scores, there are certain exams, as I said, that you need to write if you're looking to go outside of India. And some of these are SATs, ACTs, and AP, and that we will IELTS, TOEFL. So these are the few exams that we will talk about in today's webinar as we move along. The third important parameter is profile building. Now, what is profile building? When you really look at college application process, when you're trying to get into a college and you're looking to do a certain major, there are certain activities that you will do in the last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years to show to the college that you are really interested in pursuing this particular major, right? That is what is profile building for me, right? So it could be internship, it could be research work, it could be summer school program, it could be, writing blogs, writing white paper. It could be any of those things, which all of that encapsulated together is largely the profile building. And then the fourth component that you have is the college application, right? Which is largely your final year thing, which happens in grade 12, which includes shortlisting of universities, writing essays, writing letter of recommendation. So all of that becomes your part of your college application process. So these are 4 major pillars. Whenever you need to think about going outside of India for study abroad, these are the 4 pillars that should come to your mind, and you should start evaluating yourself based on these 4 major pillars, right? Now, keeping in mind, today we are largely focused on discussing the standardized test scores. And in that, the first test that we want to pick up is the SAT test, right? SAT, as you all know by now, is a digital exam. It's called digital SAT now, starting March 2023. It's a 2 hours, 14-minute test. There are roughly 2 sections which you will encounter in this exam. The exam is conducted by US-based organization called collegeboard.org. The exam happens 7 times a year. So you can take it in the month of March, May, June, August, October, November, and December. So these are 7 times when this exam really happens. There are multiple options since everyone is from DPS today. So DPS East today. So there are various schools across Bangalore which offers you to do the SAT. So if you would like to do the SAT, you have to go to the College Board website, register it on the website. There are multiple schools which are offering it within Bangalore, and you can register it on your own. So that's how the registration process really helps. It's required for most of the US colleges. Additionally, it helps in many other geographies. Now, this is an important line. It says it's required for most US colleges, right? Why do I say most, right? Because so whenever you try and get into the application or the university website, you will realize there are largely 3 kinds of colleges. There is the first set of college which will say submit. So I think there's largely 3 terms you would encounter, more than 3 types of colleges. There is first term, which is called test mandatory. That means you have to do the SAT exam and then submit this course. So that is test mandatory. There is second term called test optional. What does that mean? Basically, if in case you have done the exam, you can submit it. If you have not, you can skip it. However, looking at the last 2-3 years data, we strongly request students to do the SAT test for all the test optional colleges. The third important point is test blind. Test blind is nothing but any university which says even if you submit your SAT scores, we will not be looking at these scores. Those kind of universities are known as test blind universities. So all universities in California are test blind in nature, right? So that's why I said this is required by most of the US colleges. It also helps in many other geographies because apart from US, Canada, Singapore, Hong Kong, so these are some of the other countries where SAT is also accepted. It may not be mandatory there, but it is accepted in terms of, and it's important in terms of admission, plus more so from the scholarship perspective. Now, what does this test really entail, right? So as I said, this is a digital SAT. So it is also an adaptive exam, and that's important. So the format of exam is you'll encounter 2 different sections. One is English, one is math. In each of the section, you'll have 2 modules. Module 1 for English and module 2 for English, module 1 for math and module 2 for math. Depending on your performance in module 1, your difficulty level of module 2 will get decided, right? So that is what I meant by SAT adaptive. For example, depending on the number of students we are present today, we all may not have the same test. We all might have different tests. Our first module will be similar for all of us. However, depending on our performance, our module 2 test difficulty level will get decided. And hence, it's called adaptive in nature. You're allowed to use your own devices. So you can actually carry your own devices to the exam hall. There's a clock on the screen, which is again a welcome move because earlier people used to carry their own watches. And sometimes even if you forget to carry the watch, I think it becomes really difficult for you to keep a track of time. You can easily move between the questions. You can access the maths formulas all in one place. The exam is much shorter in length. Earlier, it used to be a 3-hour exam. Now it's only a 2 hours, 14-minute test. There used to be long reading passages earlier, which are completely gone. And now you have small paras and you have to read those paras and answer the questions. The questions are a lot more concise, a lot more straightforward. You have more time per question. And that I think we will see as we move along in this presentation. You're allowed to use the calculator all throughout the math section, which is again a welcome move because earlier there used to be a calculator section and a no calculator section. Your scores are also available in days and not weeks because it's a digital exam now. So it's easier to get the scores much faster. That's again another advantage of having the digital SAT. Now, I think some of you might have this question, right? Since digital SAT we said is an adaptive exam, then how does the scoring works, right? So I think let me try and just help you explain this with the help of an example. So let's assume there are 20 questions, right? So there is stage 1 and stage 2. I remember I told you that there are 2 stages for each of the modules. For example, in English, you'll have stage 1, English for stage 2. For all of us, our stage 1 English paper would be same. Depending on the scores that we get in stage 1, our stage 2 scores will get decided. For example, if in case you write an exam and you get a 16 out of 20, your stage 2 paper is going to be difficult. In addition to that, your upper and lower limit of your SAT English score will also get decided. Your lower limit can be 680, your upper limit can be 800, right? However, let's say if I have done an exam and I've not done really well in exam, let's say I got 9 out of 20, that means I fall in this basket. My stage 2 paper is easier. Though it is easier, at the same time, my upper and lower limit for my final score is also predefined. Now, the lowest that I can get is 440. The maximum that I can get is 560, right? So depending on my performance in stage 1, my stage 2 paper is already decided, right? So this is the maximum score that I can get even if I do everything right in stage 2. The minimum that I can get is 440 even if I do everything wrong in stage 2, right? So that is how the adaptiveness really works, and which largely means that you really have to do well in stage 1. I think that becomes super important parameter for everybody who's writing the exam. Let's try and understand some of these sections, right? As I said, English and maths. So in English, you'll have a total of 2 modules. You have a total of 54 questions in 64 minutes. Maths will have 44 questions in 70 minutes. Both these sections, the minimum score that you can get is 200. The maximum that you can get is 800. So overall, it's on a scale of 400 to 1600 points. Now let's look at individual sections. What are the testing in English, right? So as I said, it's going to be a 2-stage adaptive design. There are a total of 27 questions. However, out of 27 questions, there are only 25 questions which are operational questions, and there are 2 questions which are experimental questions, right? So those 2 questions will not be accounted towards your final score. However, you wouldn't know which are these 2 questions, and hence you will have to do all the 27 questions with the equal focus, right? And you have about 32 minutes to solve these questions. And I think this is an important point for you to note. So you're in SAT English section, you have 1.19 minute per question. And the reason why I'm saying that it's an important point to note, because we will come back to a point of comparison when we will talk about the ACT as the other exam. What are they testing you on? As I said, they're short reading passages. They're testing you on 4 different content domains that we will check in the next section. I think the most important part that you really need to focus on is the reading part of it, right? So when they're taking up these paras, they're taking up these paras from different zones, right? So it could be literature, history, social studies, humanities, sciences. So I think that's a very, very critical component. I think one of my suggestions to all the students, if they're students from grade 9th and grade 10th, and since you guys have some time before you even write your SAT exam, I would just start focusing on your reading habits. I think that is super, super important. Start reading articles if you're not reading, and not just, don't just read fictions. I think you'll have to read all the different zones. That would really help you to do well finally at the end of it. So I think that is super, super helpful in case you really want to do well in your SAT exams. Now, what are the 4 different content domains in which they test you on? So they broadly categorize them into these categories: craft and structure, information and ideas. These 2 largely test your understanding of your comprehension, vocabulary, analysis, synthesis. How well can you interpret the data, evaluate the data? How well can you logically integrate them, right? So these are the things that they're largely testing you on. These are predominantly reading-based skills that they're testing. And then the next 2 content domain are standard English convention and expression of ideas, which largely testing your grammar skills, right? Your sentence correction, usage, punctuation, semicolon, colon, dashes, all the rules which are related to English grammar will get tested here. And similarly, they'll also test you on your rhetorical skills. So these are the 4 major content domain in which you will be tested in your English component, which is reading and writing section. Then comes the math section. Again, just like English, it is again 2-stage adaptive design. You have a total of 22 questions, out of which 20 are operational questions and 2 are experimental questions. You have roughly about 35 minutes to solve these questions. On an average, you have 1.59 minutes per question. And again, please do keep note of this time, because we will do a point of comparison when we are talking about the ACT. So you roughly have about 2 minutes per question for the SAT maths. What are they testing you on? They're largely divided into 4 major categories. First one is algebra, which generally tests your linear equation, inequalities, equation, and system of equation. Problem solving and data analysis, which is ratio, rate, proportion, 1 and 2 variable data. The third one is advanced math, which includes everything which is non-linear, quadratic equation, exponential equations. The fourth one is geometry and trigonometry, which is area, lines, angle, triangle, volume, trigonometry, and so on, right? Again, another important thing to note here is algebra, problem solving, and data analysis is almost about 70% of the paper. Geometry and trigonometry is only about 10 to 12%, and advanced math is just about 10 to 12%. So geometry and trigonometry is just about 10 to 12%. I think that's an important point as a key takeaway from here, because when we are again talking about the ACT, I would come back and focus on this part as well. So ACT math is very, very algebra heavy. I think that's one thing that I want you to take away from this particular slide. Now, the next exam, right? So which is the next exam, which is ACT. Now, when I'm talking about ACT, I think I would like to do a point of comparison between the two exams rather than just telling you what the ACT is, right? So I think let's talk about what are the commonalities. Just like ACT, ACT is also conducted by an organization which is US-based called act.org. ACT exam happens 7 times a year, just like the SAT. There are, because it's online, you are allowed to go to the center and you have to do the center. So it's a digital exam. So I think these are the similarities. But now let's talk about what are the other areas in the ACT which may not be very, very similar. So duration is 2 hours 55 minutes, which is different from the SAT. So this is a longer test. That's one of the major difference. There are a total of 5 sections as opposed to 2 in SAT. There here you will encounter 5 sections, and it is obviously a longer exam. So these are some of the differentiating factors that you will encounter between SAT and ACT. Now, these are largely in terms of the format. Now let's try and understand in terms of topic wise, what are they testing you on, how different are they in those perspectives and parameters. So as I said, there are 5 different sections. The first one is English, maths, reading, science, and essay component, which is an optional essay component. Your scale on a scale of 1 to 36, unlike SAT, which is on a scale of 400 to 1600, here you are scored on a scale of 1 to 36, and the average of 4 sections will be found out. That will become your final score. Here you also have an optional essay component, which is not part of your SAT, right? So that is again an additional difference that you will encounter between SAT versus ACT. The first section, which is the ACT English section, is largely you have 75 questions and you have 45 minutes to solve these questions. That means you only have 36 seconds per question. If you remember, in SAT, we had 1.19 minutes per question. That's the major difference between SAT versus ACT. ACT is very, very time intensive. You have to be really, really quick to do well in the ACT. That also means that the questions are slightly simpler as opposed to SAT, but you have to do them very, very quick. In terms of what they're testing on, it's exactly the same. Usage and mechanics, rhetorical skills, which is exactly the same. It's testing on grammar skills, and they're testing on your rhetorical skills. So in terms of the content, I think there's not much of a difference if you really look at it from the very, very high level. The next section that you will encounter is SAT math section, just very straightforward, 60 minutes, 60 questions. You have 1 minute per question flat, which is, again, if you remember in SAT, we had 1.59 minutes per question. So again, here you have to be really, really quick. You have less time and you have more number of questions to solve. Thankfully enough, you're allowed to use a calculator just like the SAT in ACT as well. What are they testing you on? So you have algebra, you have geometry, you have trigonometry. But I think content-wise, again, more or less the same. The major differentiating factor here is algebra is roughly about 55%. Geometry and trigonometry is another 40 to 45%. So here you have very good weightage to geometry and trigonometry as opposed to the ACT, where SAT, where it was very, very algebra heavy. Algebra was almost about 70 to 80% there. Here it's only about 55%. So another point of comparison when you're deciding between the two exams, which one you should be taking, I think you can also based in depending on whether you like a geometry or not, or whether you like algebra or not. So that could become another point of differentiation between the two exams. The third section is reading section, which is very, very similar to the SAT. I would also say in terms of time as well. There are roughly about 40 questions. You have 35 minutes to solve these questions. That means you roughly have about 8 minutes, roughly have about 52 seconds per question. So I think, again, you have to be really, really quick, even in the ACT reading section. Just like the SAT, but it's still better than the ACT English section. What are they testing on? Very similar. You have to be good at prose fiction, social science, humanities, natural sciences. So they will test you. They will send you the passages from the different zoners, and you will have to read these passages and answer the questions. Again, reading becomes a most important skill if you really want to do well in the reading section. And not just that, I think in ACT, there's another surprise component, which is ACT science section. And I know, a lot of you might have this confusion that, oh, okay, I need to do the science as well for this. What are they testing me on, testing me here, right? So I think one of the most important thing to note here, and, a lot of students and parents come to me and say, hey, Rajdeep, you know what? We don't plan to do any STEM course. Do we still write ACT? Should we still write ACT? Or we want to do STEM course, we should be doing ACT, right? So I think one of the most important myth here is that ACT science section does not entail any science. It's largely a reading section. It's a science-based reading section. So you're reading science-based passages and answering the question. So even if you are not a science student, don't worry, you will not struggle with this section. But yes, if you have done science, I think you will have an advantage because you might end up doing better here. But even if not, it's completely fine even in that case, right? When you look at the ACT science section, you have roughly about 40 questions and you have 35 minutes. So just like the reading section, you have roughly about 52 to 53 seconds per question in the ACT science. What are they largely testing you on? There are three major parameters, or rather the categories in which you can divide the passages. This data representation passages, which is largely just reading the tables, chart, graphs, and so on, and then presenting them onto the for you to understand and analyze the data. That is data representation kind of passages. The second kind of passages are research summary passages, which is nothing but where, let's say, an individual has done a research, they will present their research findings, they will present their experimental results plus their findings. That is research summary experiments or research summary passages. These are slightly more textual as compared to data representation. And the third kind is conflicting viewpoint passages, where you will find more than one person. So it could be two, it could be three people presenting their viewpoints on a particular topic. They could be a similar viewpoint, it could be a conflicting viewpoint, right? And hence it becomes a lot more theoretical in nature. So conflicting viewpoint passages are a lot more theoretical as compared to the other two passages. So these are three different categories of passages that you will encounter when you're doing an ACT science exam. Now, I think an important point comes here, right? Since we have covered the ACT, we have covered the ACT, I think one of the most important point that comes here is, should I be doing an SAT or an ACT? Because in US, they both are equally acceptable. So I think one of the important parameter, if you're deciding between the two exams, are you only looking to go or apply to US? If that's the objective, then whether you write SAT or ACT, it does not really matter. However, if you're also looking to apply to other places like in India, Ashoka, Azim Premji and other university, which we'll talk about, or in Canada, Singapore, and a couple of other places, then you might want to give preference to SAT over ACT because of the acceptance. So that could be one of the major reasons. Second, I think we have talked about all the differences, right? SAT is a shorter exam, ACT is a longer exam. ACT, you will have easier questions, but you have less time. SAT, you have longer question, less number of questions, but you have more time to solve these questions. I think these are the different parameters that you really need to think about before you decide which is the right exam for you. However, we understand this is the most difficult process for any student or any family to decide. What we generally recommend, we offer a free diagnostic test to all the students. You can visit this particular link or a website. We will also share this, post this webinar with all of you, wherein you can go and register yourself for free, and you can try and attempt one ACT test and one ACT diagnostic test for free of cost. This will really help you to understand how are these two tests different from each other and which is the right test for you, right? So I think that becomes an important parameter. With that, let me look at the next exam, which is PSAT, right? Now, what is PSAT? PSAT is nothing but a preliminary SAT or it's a shortened version of SAT. It's a preliminary or a practice SAT, literally, right? So you can write PSAT either in grade 9, grade 10, grade 11, grade 8. So you can write as early as grade 8. That's a major difference between PSAT and SAT. No college will ever ask you your PSAT score. So you are not writing PSAT for your colleges, right? So then the question comes in, then why am I writing PSAT? First of all, you don't have to write PSAT. You are completely fine even if you don't write PSAT. And then the question is, then why do people write PSAT, those who are writing PSAT, right? So a couple of reasons why they're writing is, one of the reasons could be because they want to understand where do they stand globally today, right? And they want to figure out where do they stand and what are the areas they need to work on. So I think that becomes an important parameter for them. The second reason why some people write PSAT is because they also want to understand from the PSAT there are certain schools which allow you to do summer school based on your PSAT score. So some students want to go for summer school outside of India. They are the other set of students who write PSAT when they are, let's say, in grade 9th or grade 10th because of the summer school program. The third category of student who write PSAT are also, if there's an OCI card holder, right? Any student who is a US citizen, if you are in grade 11, if you write PSAT in grade 11, you become eligible for NMSQT, which is National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. And I think that's one of the reasons why some students write PSAT, if in case you're looking to fetch some scholarships, right? In terms of exam, in terms of component, in terms of difficulty level, it's very, very similar to SAT. Obviously, it's slightly simpler than SAT, but it's exactly the same in terms of how the scoring works, scaling works, what are the sections. So when you prepare for SAT, you automatically get prepared for PSAT. So I think that's an important point to note here. So that's about the PSAT. Now let's talk about the last exam that we wanted to talk here, which is advanced placement. I think this is very, very important. And again, this is one of those topics which requires a complete webinar in itself. However, I will try and cover up as much as I can in the 5 minutes. Now, some of us are doing IGCSE here, some of us doing ASA level, IB, some students could be doing CBSE, ICSE, and so on and so forth. I think what is more important to note here, what is advanced placement? So advanced placement is like a curriculum. If you are aware, in US, they don't follow any particular curriculum. Every state has their own curriculum. And hence College Board, the same organization which is conducting SAT, came up with something called advanced placement courses, which are being offered to students when they are in school. So students can go and write these exams in the school in US along with their school. However, in India, they're not being offered directly by any school, and hence you have to register yourself as a private candidate. That is what advanced placement courses are. Now, there are multiple subjects. There are almost about 30 plus subjects in which advanced placement courses are available right now in India. But the major reason is, I think the major question that comes here is, why should I even do this, right? Let's say I'm in IGCSE board, I'm doing 8 subjects, then why do I need to do more subjects? I think that is the important point to note here. One of the important thing is, remember these are college level courses, right? So it really, really helps you to stand out in your college application process. If you've done an AP course, if you've done well in that course, you actually get college credit. For example, if I write AP Calculus exam, AP Calculus BC exam, and I get 5 on 5, AP is on a scale of 1 to 5. And if I get 5 on 5, then in that case, I actually can skip 3 semester math courses in college. Sem 1, Sem 2, Sem 3, I don't have to do any of these math courses. I can straight away jump onto Sem 4 and do the math courses there. So it really, really helps out in standing out the college admission. It helps in earning college credit. If you are earning college credit, that means you are also saving cost, right? Because in US, you are paying for every college that and every credit that you earn in college. If you've already earned credits while you are in India, you have obviously saved money. You can skip the introductory classes, as I said. It also helps you to build the rigor because, as I said, advanced placement are difficult courses. They are very, very similar to the college level courses, and hence they really help you to build the rigor, right? Now, these are the reason why different people write advanced placement courses. But my suggestion is, please don't think about writing these exams if you are not doing well in school academics. School academics have to be in place for you to do well in advanced placement. I think that is super, super critical at this point of time. Now, with that, I know, advanced placement in itself is a huge topic. If somebody wants to know a little bit more about this, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to sit with you one-on-one individually and help you understand a little bit more about the AP exams. Now, let's try and understand the testing timelines. I think that is super critical. Now, I'll connect it back to the first slide where we started. As I said, there are 4 pillars. The first pillar was academics. Your grade 9, 10th, 11th, 12th academic scores are super important. The second pillar is profile development. So all the activities that you will do in the next 4 years or the last 4 years will account towards your college application process. The last year includes college application process, which is largely shortlisting of university and then applying to the colleges. And then additionally, what you have that we discussed is the SAT, ACTs, and APs. And I think the important point to note here is, when should you be doing this exam? As I said, PSAT can be done in grade 8, grade 9, grade 10. You can also do PSAT in grade 11, only if you're a US citizen, because then it's known as NMSQT, National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. When should you be doing SAT, ACT? In 10th grade, you should probably go and write the diagnostic test. That will help you understand where are you at this point of time and which is the right test for you. The summer break that you get right after your 10th summer break is the perfect time for you to start preparing for your SAT and then try and write your first attempt of SAT probably in the month of August or October in the year when you are in grade 11, right? So that's your ideal time for you to do the SAT. If you're already in grade 11, you should start as soon as possible. If you're in grade 12, you should start today, right? So I think that is the right timeline for you to do the SATs, ACTs. Now, again, these are general timelines, generic timelines with regards to keeping everyone in mind. However, there are individual personalized timelines. Feel free to connect back with us. We'll be happy to, talk about individual students and then walk you through these individual timelines. So if you would like to know the timeline that fits your requirement, please feel free to reach out to us, drop us a message. We will set up a 30-minute free one-on-one consultation session and help you plan your journey for the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, depending on which grade you are in. Feel free to do that, post this webinar. Now, remember in the beginning, I also said apart from in US, there are multiple other geographies where SAT scores are acceptable. And thankfully enough, in India, there are almost about 44 universities as we speak, which are accepting SAT scores. And some of them are really, really famous ones as well. For example, Ashoka University, Azim Premji, Flame, Kriya, Shivnadar, Manavrachna, Plaksha. There are a lot of these universities which are accepting SAT scores in India today. Now, the question would be then why do I write SAT score? Why should I write SAT? I can probably go and write their exams, right? Which is very, very fair point. But I think the advantage here is when you are doing an SAT exam, instead of, let's say if you're applying to 4 universities, instead of writing 4 different exams, you're just writing one exam, which is SAT exam, and using that exam, you're applying to all these universities, right? So I think that's the advantage of you doing the SAT score, you having the SAT scores if you're planning to apply to any of these universities. Now, with that, we've covered all the topics. Let me just quickly give a 2-minute and explain you how we at ReWiser really help students in terms of our SAT ACT prep. We largely divide the component into 4 phases: phase 0, 1, 2, and 3. Phase 0 is about diagnostic test, which, as I've said, I've offered to all of you. Phase 1 is where there is online classroom training that happens. These are live training. There are roughly about 40 hours of reading, writing, and math sessions that happens. And after every session, there are equal amount of assignments. So if you're doing a 2-hour session, there are 2 hours of assignment that you need to do. So overall, you're looking at about 80 hours of time commitment, which happens over a period of roughly about 2.5 months. Once this gets done, we move to phase 2. In phase 2, we assign a dedicated mentor to every student. And from here on, it becomes a personalized program. The mentor will look at your phase 1 assignment scores and figure out the areas where you have done well and the areas where you need to improve on. Based on that, craft a study plan for you. And against this study plan, they will have a checkpoint every week to figure out if you're in the right direction or not and what needs to be done to improve on those areas. This is the point where student is doing a lot of sectional practices. Once this gets done, we move to phase 3, which is largely about the mock test, where student is doing at least about 10 full-length tests before they write their final exam. Every test that they write, they get a detailed report saying what areas they've done well, what areas they need to improve, and so on and so forth. So this is how the entire program works. As I said, in phase 2, phase 3, it's a highly personalized program. There's a dedicated mentor that works with you, with a particular student, to figure out your areas of strengths and weaknesses, and then try and improve in those areas. So not just this, I mean, any program that we offer, we don't just offer this full training. If there are students who come to us and say, we just need help with the English program, we just need help with maths, or we just need help with practice papers, right? Because as I've told you, SAT is digital now. We are one of those companies in India which has digital SAT exam present. We have more than 15 plus digital SAT exam as we speak today, which students come and take from us. So that's also an option. So you have different options available out of which you can pick and choose what is the right fit for you. And we also try and help you figure out which is the right program for you, depending on your diagnostic test score. So that's how the overall program works. These are just some numbers from our past results. So our highest SAT scores is 1590. Our average is around 1450. Our highest ACT score is about 36. Average is about 32. The highest AP score is 515. The average is around 4.6. We offer, as we speak, about 13 subjects in APs, which includes calculus, statistics, physics, chemistry, bio, In physics itself, you have 4: computer science, psychology, world history. So these are some subjects that we offer under AP program. With that, I have covered all the topics that I wanted to discuss. I would like to open the forum for Q&As. If in case you guys have any question, please feel free to put it up in the chat section, or, taking an advantage of, less attendance today, we can also allow people to have, turn on your audio and you can ask your questions. You can ask question on ACTs, APs, anything related to study abroad is welcome.
Sir, I'm I'm in grade 10.
Okay.
Sir, I want to pursue like in the field of commerce. So even for either commerce or science, does SAT hold the same value or ACT, anything?
That's right, Shreya. You're right. You're absolutely right. That's what we discussed in the beginning. Unlike in India, when you're looking to go outside of India, you have to do SAT or ACT irrespective of whatever it is, right? Even if it is medicine, engineering, commerce, any field that you pick, it's the same set of exam that you will end up writing.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thanks. Another question from Rishika: can SAT be written after graduation? No, Rishika, SAT is for admission in undergrad, right? So after your undergrad, if you want to do masters, then there are different exams that you need to write, like GRE and GMAT. Thanks, Rishika.
Sir, could you show the slide where you mentioned for SAT the number of questions in English and math and the time? So
Yeah. So what we will be doing, Shrey, since you have registered, we'll also be sharing the recording of this webinar. You guys can go back and watch it as many times as you want.
Oh, okay, sir. That's great then.
Yes. So you will have the recording, access to the recording. So we'll be sending you a mail by today evening itself, which will have the recording from today's webinar. It'll also have a brochure. It'll also have the diagnostic test link. So you can go on to the link and, do the diagnostic test on your own. Perfect. Any other questions from anybody? Okay, I got another question. Do you provide the STs or STs, or do we have to go to College Board to do that? Chavi, College Board is the organization which conduct these exams. So we help you prepare for these exams. College Board is the organizing body, right? So they are the organization which is conducting these exams. So you will have to register on the College Board website to do these exams. And College Board also conducted through different schools. So you will have to go to different schools and write these exams. For example, TISB is a center, Candor is a center, BIS is a center. So there are various schools across Bangalore which are College Board centers for SATs. Rishika, again, GMAT is acceptable, but it is acceptable for masters, not for undergrad. GMAT, GRE are acceptable for masters, not for undergrad. Are SAT or ACT scores more acceptable universities in UK? Great question, Parul. For UK is the only geography where you don't need SATs or ACTs. Apart from few universities, for example, if you're applying to Oxbridge, right, Oxford and Cambridge, there you can submit your SAT scores and they will look at it. However, if you're applying to UCL, if you're applying to King's College or any of the other colleges, UK will not require you to do an SAT or an ACT. It is not a mandatory requirement. So if you're very, very clear about UK, then you may not even want to think about doing the SAT or ACT. UK is very, very, so remember the 4 pillars that I spoke about. In UK, academics is the most important pillar. That's almost about 80% of your overall application process. You have to be really, really good in terms of your academics to get admission in UK. So UK is very, very similar to India, right? In India, we follow British curriculum, right? So a British system. So UK is very, very similar to India. You get good grades, you get into a college, and when you get into a college, you get into specific program, and you have to stick to that program for the next 4 years. Perfect. Thanks, Parul. Any other questions? Perfect. I think these are the questions that we have. I don't see anything else coming. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining in. I hope it was a useful session. It was a pleasure talking to all of you guys. Thanks for asking all the questions. Thank you. Have a lovely weekend. Bye-bye.